Hey there, fearless gamers. Matt the Clown here with another Back to Basics video. I apologize if there's any kind of weird white noise in the background. It's a little warm in my room, so I've got the air conditioner and the fan running because I am fat and hate the heat. In any case, with this video, which will be the third in our series, I'm going to show you it's not quite a painting. I'm gonna show you a couple of techniques, one of which isn't quite painting, but is just as important for getting your model started, and is what I consider to be a basic step. So I'm just gonna get right into it. This video is going to be about putting your model together and priming it. So here we go. Alright, so 40K, you need these little bases, came with your models, whatever. That is what it is. But, and I'm going to be doing this, like with my previous video, I'm going to be using my Sanguinary Guard that I'm working on for Legends of War. So, here I've already cut out the, I've already clipped the legs for this one piece. I'm going to be starting on here. But I'm going to show you the sprues. Yay. Basically, I'm going to clip out the chest piece and the head for this video. But, you know, if you don't know what clippers are, and you've been in the hobby for anything more than like 6 hours, then I can't help you. If you are watching this video within 6 hours of starting into the hobby, welcome. Pick up some clippers. You can get them at any hobby store or any hardware store, and they look like this. Snip, snip. They're used to get your little bits off of the sprues, which are, sprue is what the big thing of plastic is called. Okay, so once you have the, hold on, I gotta get the head. Oops. Got distracted. Okay, no, I don't want that head. I will be taking, this is the hard part, picking which bits you want, and I should have done that before I started the video, but I didn't. I make no apologies. YOLO. Alright, so once you have your legs, head, chest, front and back, whatever other bits you want to use to assemble your model to the extent that you like to assemble it before painting. Some people don't assemble it all before painting. Some people assemble it completely before painting. The point I've come to is I like to assemble it legs, body, and head, and then maybe backpack or jetpack, depending on what's on it, before doing any painting. Then I'll do the arms and shoulder pads separately for the, or just sort of add those on over time. I just find that to be the easiest way. So once you've got all this set up, I've already done what I'm about to explain to you for the legs, because I didn't want to spend too much time showing you everything. But basically what I want you to do is take your hobby knife. If you don't have a hobby knife, get a hobby knife. They're fairly cheap. You know, take it, and being very careful because these things are sharp as hell, you're going to look along the side of the model for any mold lines. Mold lines will be... mold lines come from when they cast the model. I actually am going to show you a bit more in depth than I originally intended. I'm about to cut some more legs, so hold on just a second. But yeah, mold lines come from when they cast the model in the plastic to put it on the sprue. The two halves of the mold have to come together to make the, you know, sprue, and as a result you get, now I don't know if you can see them, but you should be able to see right, I'm going to use the hobby knife, right here-ish, here and here, and up here, even though this part is covered, here, you'll see those are the mold lines. Now, from a distance, it doesn't really matter. Up close, no matter how good your paint job is, people are going to see them. So if you really want to give it that extra little oomph, which I like to do, I consider that fairly basic at this point. I didn't used to do it. I've started is you take your hobby knife, and you take the bladed edge, and you put it at, say, like a 3/4 angle against the plastic, and you just kind of scrape it along where the mold line is, like so, almost like peeling a potato, until the mold line is gone. Some people do this for a while. I do it for about that amount of time for each little piece where you can obviously see the mold line. So I'll do that here. Now you'll see the mold line is gone. The next thing you're also going to do, since you just clipped the legs or the head or whatever, is you see these little bits here from where you were, from where you clipped it. You're going to want to just sort of use the hobby knife as carefully as you can. I'm sorry, all you see is hands, I'm sorry. But as carefully as you can, you're just going to want to use the blade of the hobby knife. See that there? See? Okay, so use the hobby knife as carefully as you can. Also sort of in a similar manner, but with a slightly flatter angle, to just cut everything flat. That will make it easier to glue things later on, and will give you an overall better look. So, yeah, basically do that for each of the pieces that you feel the need to do. I'm doing that right now off camera for the chest pieces, just because I don't want you to be staring at my fat ham hands this whole video. So we're just going to do that. And that'll only take a couple of seconds. The great thing about Space Marine chest pieces is that the mold lines are basically where the two chest pieces come together. So you don't need to mess around getting rid of mold lines before you put the two chest pieces together, which saves a little bit of discomfort trying to hold those things together. You know, you hold those little bits together while you're taking off mold lines. Then you're going to take your glue and you're going to assemble to whatever your preference is. So always use as little glue as you can manage, because with any kind of crazy glue, specifically for me, I use Zap-A-Gap. It's a good product. I highly recommend it. A little goes a long way, and too much, this is going to be something I'm going to stress in further videos as well, too much glue is actually going to make it more difficult for the bonding process to occur. I don't know what the science behind that is. I was a creative writing major in college, after being a fine arts major for 3 years and a publishing major for a year. So science is not my forte. If you want to know more about science, you're going to have to ask the Stark Lord. He would understand that whole thing better. Now you see I've glued it to the base. Some people like to do up the base before gluing the model on. I don't really even do up the base typically, but I find it easier to do up the base after the model is on there, because I don't really do super complicated bases. I imagine if you were going to do a super complicated base, be it lava or rocks or something like that, then yeah, go ahead and do that up before you put the model on. If you're doing a basic model and you're just going to put some flock on there, glue the model on first. Now you got the chest piece. Again, just a little bit of glue. A little dab will do you. You put that on like so, or however kind of pose you want. And that's the cool thing about doing these models, is that you get to really kind of pose them however you like. Like, I think this guy looks like he's backing up, so I'm kind of making him into a more defensive pose. And then we take the head and we do the same. Most people who do tutorials like this would fast forward through something like this, or would pause and come back. I'm not going to do that because I am lazy and don't do most of my own film editing. So I kind of feel bad for the vet who actually does most of my video work, because I'm kind of illiterate when it comes to video technology, whereas he thrives on it. It's something he really enjoys doing. In return, I don't like the way that looks, so I'm going to adjust it, because you can do that, because it's just a hobby, and because, whatever, it's glue. No, I don't like that either. That's the great thing about this kind of hobby as well. Now, if you don't like the way something looks, you just rip it apart, and once the glue dries, or if it already dried and you're ripping it apart later on, make sure you scrape any dried or excess glue off with your hobby knife or whatever other knife, because if you don't, that's going to make the bonding process when you re-glue it much more difficult. You're going to have to sit there and hold it for days and days, and I wish I were joking about that. I'm putting that on backwards, Jesus. Oh, man. I'm sure you guys are listening to my heavy breathing and going, what is this? I apologize, I've had 3 pneumonias in my lifetime. My lungs are constantly labored, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, so we have this dude assembled. Now, wait for your paint to dry. Absolutely wait for your paint to dry before you start... Oh, I hit the camera. Wait for your paint to dry before you start priming your model. Unless you don't care about the brush with which you're priming, in which case, go right ahead. But I highly recommend you just wait. It'll increase the life of even the crappiest brush, and it gives you a chance to just sort of reflect upon your life and your choices and your overall decisions. Anyway, also cap your glue, because you don't want that to dry out. Now, this waiting for the paint to dry gives me an opportunity to discuss something very important about priming. There are 2 schools of thought when it comes to priming your models. One school of thought uses spray primer. A highly recommended brand is Krylon, because the Games Workshop spray primers are actually just spray paints. So, a lot of people don't recommend those, because the main reason for using a spray primer is because you are looking for the actual primer component. A spray primer really is just a spray paint that has a little extra ingredient that will help the paint stick to your model. Because it's not very easy to get paint to stick to a plastic model unprimed. It can be kind of a hassle, so you don't go straight to your base coat, you prime the model. Priming is very important. However, priming also needs to be kept thin, which is where the other school of thought, the one that I usually prefer to do, comes in, where instead of using spray primer, you prime it by hand. Priming by hand is done with just regular old paint. I have yet to find actual primer in a pot of any kind. If any of you viewers know of a primer in a pot that has like that extra primer ingredient, by all means post that in the comments. However, the way I've been doing it, the way I'm going to continue to do it for smaller armies or for HQs, is I just take a pot of glorious Chaos Black. I take the Chaos Black and I thin it up a little like any other paint, and I put it on in as many layers as it takes. Sometimes it takes 1, sometimes it takes a whole bunch, depending on how temperamental the plastic is being. And I put it on until I have one really nice, even coat over the model. And what that does is it primes the model to hold paint, but keeping it thin keeps all these wonderful little details that you see. Now, I don't know how many of these details you can see because I only have top lighting, so he's got a crazy bit of shading here. However, so if you're doing high detail models, I highly recommend priming by hand, unless you really don't feel like putting in that extra effort, and if you have really, really good control over a spray paint can, to keep things from getting too clogged up. Because if you overdo it on a spray paint can, which is not hard to do, you're going to lose a lot of detail. I'm sure there are some people who prime with an airbrush, using probably some kind of crazy airbrush primer. I don't know a thing about airbrushes. If that's the case, or if you're looking into that, I unfortunately can't tell you much. I don't have any experience with that, but I'm sure it happens. So I think this guy is dry enough for me to start priming him. So I'm going to take my super duper poor man's palette, which is literally just an old clear acrylic shelf that I used to use to hold some of my toy collection that I've sold most of at this point because I just didn't have the money to keep it up and was getting more into this hobby. I'm going to use that. Always shake your paints up a little bit. Now, this is actually one of the older pots. I prefer these to the flip-top ones. I do have cast back in the flip-top. I prefer these because instead of having to pop it open like that and you get like the little restricted hole, I always liked to just screw the thing open, which gives you unrestricted access to your paint. And yes, always thin your paints first, so dip your brush in the water, kind of dry that bad boy out, get a little bit of that paint, put it on your palette or whatever you prefer to use, get a little bit more water, only a couple of drops, and thin your paint out if you're priming by hand. This is if you're priming by hand. If you don't want to prime by hand, you can go ahead and skip to the end of this video, or skip the rest of this video, depending. But yeah, you just take it and you just kind of just start painting it on there. Keep it thin. Don't worry if it starts to come off quickly. That's fine, because you're going to probably have to do a few coats before it gets a good enough coverage. But you will be absolutely preserving the details of the model by doing this. Some dudes like to use a larger brush than this. The only reason I'm using this brush is because I've already beaten it to hell and back, and you don't need a super nice brush to do your priming. You just need a brush that will do the job. Okay, and we're back. This is pretty much what it's going to look like when you prime it. You know, all one color, all, in this case, black. You can prime in other colors. Some people like to prime in gray, some people like to prime in white. I actually will occasionally prime in gray or white, depending on what color the army's going to be. If it's going to be a lot of bright colors, I won't prime in black. I'll prime in gray typically, unless it's supposed to be some really clean, bright colors. Then it's typically done in white. However, with the way I'm painting the Sanguinary Guard, even though they end up being white, I do a nice base coat of Deneb Stone, which I think at this point the equivalent is Rakarth Flesh if you're going out and buying new paints. And that gives a really nice coverage over the black. It's a nice sort of mid-tone. It's this one here. But I'll go more into detail about that in another video. But yeah, so yeah, I just want to go over, one last time the idea that you prime your models to keep the paint on the model when you're painting it. There's spray primer. There's hand priming with paint. There was something I said. Oh God, I keep hitting that. I'm sorry, guys. There was something I said while I was priming this guy. This is essentially the most boring part. Oh, and you'll notice, I'm going to bring him close. Hopefully you can see this. There are some points, specifically on this case the shoulders and the back, that I didn't prime completely. That's because when you're gluing a model together, like when I glue the arms on, paint and glue don't mix too well. So if you paint every single part of a piece, like where the shoulder and arm are supposed to meet, you're going to have a lot more trouble getting it stuck together with the glue. And that's going to give you a huge headache. So don't prime those parts, or at least don't completely prime those parts. Leave some areas uncovered. And if you find that you're having trouble, you can always go in with your hobby knife and scrape that paint right off. Even primer you can just scrape right off. I think most people who use spray primer completely assemble their models beforehand, but I don't want to speak for an entire community, so I won't. But yeah, I just wanted to give you guys an idea of the first steps you should be making. This is once you understand your color wheel, once you understand what shadows and light, how they work, Then it comes time to start your model, and those are the two first steps. Clipping out your pieces, taking off the mold lines and any flash. Flash will be like little bits of plastic that stick off. And then just a preliminary assembly and priming. All of those steps are super crucial to getting a really good looking model. I don't even consider myself a professional level painter, but once I started doing these things versus when I wasn't doing these things, my models look hundreds of times better than they used to. You probably will have noticed that in the Shadows and Light video with the way I introduced it there. But at this point, I'm going to call this video closed. Yeah, I'm gonna shut this one down. You guys, thanks for supporting us. Please keep doing so. Spread the word. Tell your friends if they're into the hobby. Please subscribe if you haven't. Please click like if you enjoy what we do. Comment. Let us know what we're doing is good or bad or ugly. Let us know what you want. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter if you're into those kinds of things. And just, let us know what you want so we can continue to provide content that you like. Help us help you. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, take care. This was The Clown with another episode of Back to Basics.